everybody, welcome back to the Johansson show. It's been a good couple of months and I've been waiting for that opportunity to come back, and I'm jumping straight back into the Scandinavian professional wrestling scene and my returning guest, the Uewa Cruiserweight champion, Nitro Green. Nitro, thank you for coming back on and being the first guest back in what? I've not recorded since April, I've not released since June, and I'm excited to have you as guest number one for the return.
A man of your word, I gotta give it to you.
Man of my word.
Still kind of hurt that you had so little faith in me, that me traveling to Scotland and you didn't think I could get the job done, but hey, action speaks louder than word, right?
Well, technically, I didn't say you'd get the job. You wouldn't get the job done. I've been deciding, when do I come back? I've had people saying, "Hey, can I come on your show?" Or, "Hey, you recording yet?" And I was like, I'm just getting used. Full-time dad, back at work full-time, and I can't remember what it was. I think I shared the fact that you was going to be at Respect, and I was like, "This is going to be great." And you was like, "When I take the title back, then I should be on your show." And I was like, "You know what? I need to force myself to record again because I've been putting it off whilst been doing other things." And yeah, you held me to my word and you won the title. So I was like, shit, it looks like I'm gonna have to record. So I saw the tweet, I saw the result, and I was like, okay, so that means I need to start editing things again. I'm creating a new intro, and yeah, it's been a busy few months making my commentary debut, but it's been busy for yourself. Like, when we spoke, you talked about your aspirations, where you've traveled all over the world, especially all over Europe, and you wanted to break through the UK scene. And you managed to come over to Scotland. You're going to be coming back over to Scotland as well later this year and next year. How does that feel for you, the fact that wrestling's been locked down for over a year? And when we spoke, I think it was like 11 months ago.
Close to it, yeah.
We didn't know when wrestling would return. And after a handful of matches back, you're already flying to a different country and making your debut in Scotland with Respect.
It kind of feels surreal, because the biggest fear, I think, for most of the guys in the back is, have I lost a step? I think everyone has had that thought going through their mind coming back. I know for sure that I had. Definitely since the first match I had coming back, I lost the title. So that definitely brought doubt to myself. So for me now, just seeing how the door's opening again, and I can tell you, I have just scratched the surface, and there's so much more in Europe that I want to obtain now. When the doors is like just opened a wee crack, I'm definitely gonna kick the door in.
Definitely, and I think out of a lot of the guests that I've had in Scandinavia, it's not just one company in Scotland you're going to be working for. There's at least two, potentially some more as well. Obviously, we don't want to do like curse of the interviewer or curse of the commentator kind of thing, where we say something's going to happen, because anything can happen in wrestling. But the fact is, you've just made your debut for Respect. You're going to be coming back for the 5th of November with Pro2, making your debut there on their first ever show as well.
And on the 6th of November, I'll do my debut at WCW as well.
Oh, brilliant.
In Dundee.
That's fantastic. Like,
so once again, like, that's 3 companies making my debut, and I know for now I'll be the main event in Pro2 on their first show ever. So like, that's also like, that's history right there. That just shows how much trust and faith that they put in me as a foreigner, that they'll put me in their main event on their first show ever. So once again, like, it's a lot of pressure, but that's what we live for, and that's what we love about this.
100%. And how does that feel for you, the fact that like, again, it's been locked down, you came over and you told me the story, like, obviously to fly talent internationally it can be an expensive ordeal, and the fact that you had a match at Respect and then Cammy at Pro2 was like, I need you for Pro2. How does that feel?
Once again, like, it takes away the doubts, and it takes away the voices in your head saying, "Have I lost that step?"
Yeah.
Because I've spoken to Pro2 multiple times, because Pro2 was a company that when I saw they were starting, I wanted to be a part of it because it seemed like a cool background story what they had. But as you said, like the expensive of flying me in, and definitely with the corona right now, and there's still some restrictions that coming in definitely to the UK you have to be aware of. But luckily for me, the Cameron was at the show. He saw the match that me and Luke King Sharp had, and he pulled me aside. Like I just came backstage and was like, "I need you to come at November 5th," and I jumped right on it.
Now I'm really excited to see it. Obviously, being able to edit the promos that you sent over, and with Lou's responses, and able to make that graphic as well, like it was great because again we've kept in touch for that year, and the fact that you are able to come over to the UK is going to be fantastic, and that match in itself is going to be a match where it's going to be everywhere. Like, and how does that feel? Because you mentioned you was worried that you may miss a step through the pandemic, then you make your return. What was it, the 31st of July, with New Beginnings, with Copenhagen Championship Wrestling, match number 1. It's Luke King Sharp, arguably one of your biggest adversaries, especially over the past year or so, before the pandemic.
And probably for years to come.
So what was your man process like? How did you prepare for that going into the match? Because obviously you didn't get the outcome you wanted. You had to come to Scotland to get your title back, but how did you prepare coming out of the pandemic of being not able to wrestle for maybe a year and then coming back and match number 1, your title's on the line, it's against Luke King Sharp, and it's again ranks in one of your biggest matches of your career so far?
I think there are many mistakes made on my behalf. Obviously, the biggest mistake that I made was I took a hardcore match straight up the gate, which is straight up Luke King Sharp's alley. And I've always felt comfortable in hardcore matches. But Luke King Sharp has made a career out of doing that, so that was probably my biggest mistake. That I underestimated how the length that he was willing to go to.
Yeah.
And then I purposely have tried to gain some size over the corona, like due to the pandemic, like because I wanted to be bigger when I came back, and I did, but I hadn't adjusted to being bigger because I've gained like close to 10 pounds. Over the pandemic, and even though 10 pounds is not that much, it's just a different way you move, and it's a different way how your body has to work, definitely with the moveset that I have, who is very fast paced. So I to be honest, I just wasn't ready. I felt like I was ready, and I thought I was ready, but Lou had a better strategy than I had, and I don't know if you watched the footage, but once again, like it was a bloodbath. Like Lou was bleeding profusely from his head, and he did what he had to do. He yanked the mask off of me, and then I was kind of faced with, did I cover my face, or did I go for the title? And I chose the first, and that kind of cost me the latter.
Well, obviously you bounced back and in great fashion coming over to Scotland, but going with Luke King Sharp, if people haven't listened to the first interview between you and myself, like again, have a look in the archives. You can check that out to find more of how Nitro Green became to be a wrestler, and some great stories of you wrestling, not telling your family, and trying to hide that out with obviously your cousin and your uncle kind of knew, and then it all came out. So there's some great stories, and there's great stories of early Nitro, traveling Europe and things like that. But for those listening, especially because this is going to be very heavy around your feud with Luke King Sharp, how did that begin? Like, tell everybody that's listening, how did you and Lou became to be those I guess, bitter rivals where it's not just Copenhagen Championship Wrestling, but then it's Dansk Pro Wrestling, and then it was Respect, and now it's going to be Pro2 and wherever else that you and Lou, where it's a collision course. Like, you're just on the same path going in the opposite direction, and you're always meeting in the middle at different companies. But how did it all begin? How did it all begin?
I can send you footage of Lou King Sharp's first international match, because that took place at a Dance Pro Wrestling. They had a training camp called Fake and Break.
Yeah.
And Lou King Sharp was in the main event in a tag team match against Ravn and myself. And ever since that, I kind of feel like we kind of one upped each other.
Yeah.
Lou found great success in the obviously in Scotland, and then traveled down to England, found even more success in Scotland with the ICW, and there was 5-star wrestling. Then he moved to China. Like, he was Lou has always found a way to be not main event, but he's solid up on the roster. And I did my own thing in Denmark and tried my way around Europe, and got lucky to go to the US. And then after years and years and years of hard work, I finally got my moment in Dance Pro Wrestling, where I became the heavyweight champion, and I defended it so many different occasions. And then Lou found a way to sneak his way into a Money in the Bank briefcase ladder match in Denmark, and he won the briefcase. And on the very first show where he was on with the briefcase, he cashed in at the most convenient time and took the title from me. So once again, that was one step above. And I think there's that healthy competition, but what was there's a fine line between I'm taking yours because I'm better than you, and I'm taking yours because I want it. And I think Lou and myself are kind of doing jump ropes with that right now, because there's just, for me, definitely there's a sour taste in my mouth still, because I thought at Respect that would be it.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the contract obligations that we have when we represent Uewa, there's always a demand for rematch. So I would have loved the rematch to be on Danish grounds, definitely, since the last time was in Scotland. Lou gets the home field advantage again this time, but I'm certain, when I'm done at Pro2, I'll be coming back multiple times, hopefully, to Pro2, and I will definitely bring the European title with me multiple times as well.
Do you think, you said you wish you was on home ground, but what about the pressure that brings? Because, again, new beginnings with the early shows with, and we'll get into it with CCW and Dansk Pro, you may not have had that win record you would want coming back from the pandemic, and maybe that did set in the doubt, and then it's right, maybe this is my last chance, this is my last hurrah, going to Respect, it's now or never. I need to beat Lou, I need to get the title back, and you did. And that's something you've not been able to do in Denmark since your return. So could there be less pressure on you, which is a weird way to say it, but maybe there's less pressure on you being in Scotland rather than being in your hometown, on your home turf, with everything to prove? Because at the end of the day, you're still Nitro Green. You are one of the biggest names in Scandinavian wrestling. And maybe that adds more of the pressure to yourself, whereas going to Scotland, you're the outsider, so there isn't that expectation from the audience. Do you think that might have something to play in?
I think that could play in a little bit. There's multiple factors at Respect who definitely put, the biggest thing who put a sour taste in my mouth was when I posted on Twitter, look, I won, I beat Lou King Sharp. His response was, I had a match early on the day for TV tapings for ICW. If I hadn't had that, you couldn't beat me. You don't have it, you didn't have it in you. And I sat, and it's, for the longest of time, I just stared at my phone, and I was like, you told everyone that you have worked your entire life for this. This is what mattered the very most to you, and then you went out on your first big title defense and had a match earlier on the day, that to me tells me that you don't take me as a competitor seriously, and you definitely don't take the European title seriously. I came and I was fully prepared when I came to Scotland, who just showed on the results. But when you mention pressure and having, I don't know, it's a different vibe when you get into an audience who haven't seen you before. The adrenaline is still there, but the nerves are different, because normally when my music hits in Denmark, everyone just kind of like goes, "Oh, we know who's coming." My music hit a respect, and everyone was like, "What is this? And who is?" I came out, I had the paint, and everyone was like, obviously they don't like Lou, because Lou's like a very aggressive Chihuahua, but I was also introduced as a guy coming from the other side of the pond, and obviously it was a title match. And even though we don't necessarily like Lou King Sharp, he's also a fellow Scotsman, and we don't necessarily want to see him lose the title. So the atmosphere was a little different, but I still feel like if the match will take place in Denmark, Lou and I kind of just splits the audience in two, no matter where we go.
Like, personal feelings aside with Lou, then how did you feel the match went? Like, what was that experience like with respect? How did the crowd take to you, and what was the thoughts on the promoter? Like, was he happy? Obviously, you've come in and you've beat Lou, which is obviously a big thing. You've come over and beat one of their guys, and that match in itself's got you that guaranteed match on Friday the 5th of November, Pro2 Start the Fire, first ever show. So again, how did you think the match went? What was the reception from the crowd? Like, how was that experience? And how did respect, like, what was the feedback from respect?
Overall, like, my trip last was like amazing. The promoter was super good to me, and he took really good care of me. And I was lucky. I came in a couple of days earlier since my flight got changed and all that stuff. So I got to meet some of respects trainees, and I got to go to their school, and I got to see what they're running and what they're doing and how they're just constantly improving themselves. So that was a great experience. The match, I kind of felt it was going really well.
Yep.
I have wrestled Lou so many times that now I know his movesets and he knows mine, which just also makes it for a cool dynamic, because there's just so many ways I know to counter Lou's stuff and vice versa. The audience took to me like they would take to any new guy with a mask. So obviously they needed to see what I could bring.
Yep.
But I think as the match progressed, they also realized, okay, this guy can go. And the reception coming back, obviously, I can only imagine the promoter would have loved to see the title stay in Scotland, but at the same time, I believe that he was the better man won.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes sometimes.
So when we're going back to Denmark, like I mentioned, you've not had the greatest record before coming to Scotland. Obviously, losing the title to begin with Lou at CCW, but then going with DPW Dance Pro Wrestling, you had a fatal four-way that included Hunyadi Tamas. You had Robert Caliber, and Lou was the eventual winner. And then the next night, it's maybe two of your biggest adversaries. You've got Lou, you've got Carlos Zamora, and yourself. And again, Lou got that win. And your only win to come from Denmark before coming to Scotland was against Hunyadi through disqualification. So
on behalf of Lou King Sharp, may I mention?
So how's it felt? Like, what's your mind process going back to Denmark with that record and knowing that Lou has had your number, you've won the title back? How do you feel going back to Denmark, taking that title back, and what's in store for you when you get back there? Obviously, we've got a couple of months before you come back over here to the UK, more specifically Scotland. what's next for Nitro Green with the UEWA Cruiserweight Championship?
Dance Pro Wrestling is the next thing, and that'll be in my hometown. So that's also, and I recently moved away from that town.
Yeah.
So I think now the biggest thing for me is I have to drop the excuses and the mindset of saying, okay, well, this has happened, and how do I bounce back from this? Because that's wrestling, and this has happened to me so many times, and it's and like the old saying of, it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many times you get back up.
Yeah.
This to me is just another way for me to prove myself as one of the best in Scandinavia, and I take that head on, and I'm not gonna back away and come with any excuses of what have happened in my track record in Denmark, because it's not the best right now. But I still believe with what I have lined up, and definitely with Pro2 coming in November, my goal for right now is to come through 2021 with the belt, and then have a fresh start on 2022.
100%. Is there anybody that you've got any unfinished business with, aside from Lou, when you do get back to Denmark?
And that was the biggest.
You want to settle?
I have a lot of unfinished business with Carlos Samoa, but unfortunately, he couldn't reach an agreement with Dance Pro Wrestling, so his contract just expired. And I don't know which part chose not to compromise or settle, but Carlos is not going to be found in DPW no more. And I think the biggest issue Carlos and I have, we both want to be the best, and not just in Denmark, but in Scandinavia. Yeah. And I have scoured, and I have reached, and I've tried to get to so many different promotions. And as I told you on your last podcast, UK was my big goal. And then I go on Twitter one day, and out of nowhere, Carlos Samoa has a booking in UK on the Wrestling Islands. And I was like, how? Like, yeah. And once again, like, that's just a story of Carlos and myself. Like, if I do something, oh, this is great, Carlos goes up here, and then I kind of even it out, and then Carlos just goes like, oh. so like I really wanted to settle the score with Carlos. It's not going to happen in Dance Pro Wrestling, but hopefully it's CCW eventually, or Wrestling Island as well. Like, if he goes over there and he proves that the Danes can actually bring it, then hopefully they'll bring more Danes over.
Yeah, and that's one thing that again, was speaking before, and it caught me by surprise. Where on my honeymoon, I'm just getting tagged in random stuff, and it's from the back of my show. It says Carlos stood out, and that they've been watching my show to see who's good in Scandinavia, and now they're going to consult with myself to see who they should bring in, what would fit Wrestle Island. What was your thoughts? The fact that they said they've watched the shows, they've scoured Denmark, and it was Carlos that they chose as that number one person to bring over, and not yourself in Nitro Green.
It's one of those. It's another bitter pill to swallow. And once again, like, it's a thing with Carlos. He's a good-looking guy. He's an athlete. There's no doubt about it. And he's a shooter. He's legit. It was the same. I told you when he had the WWE tryout before me. It's another stride I have to take in my pride, and then I have to prove to myself and to Carlos and to Wrestle Island that was a mistake. That they can tell themselves that they have found the best Dane, but I can guarantee them they haven't seen the best Dane yet.
So if they are checking this one out, then why should they bring Nitro Green to the island? Why should Nitro Green be in Wrestle Island?
I know, and this is I'm maybe shooting way over my head, but I know who their champ is. I know Dan Evans, and I know he's an amazing wrestler. But if that's what they like, the Wrestle Island, what I have seen from them is that they like it a little more. What's the right word to put it without sounding cocky? But to be fair, I should be cocky because I have something to back it up with. I believe what I can bring to a Wrestle Island and what I can bring to any promotion that what they haven't seen previously is that little mystique that comes with a mask and with a character who has developed over so many years and over so many different countries and different promotions. And then I was trained by one of the best shoot wrestlers. So
Yeah.
what I haven't brought to my wrestling repertoire yet is just because I haven't needed it yet. So there's so many different layers.
And you said you've got that one thing and you held up the title. So is that saying if you came to England, if you was to venture into Wrestle Island, you wanted to put that on the line?
I am very proud of being European Cruiserweight champion, and any promotion will want me to defend this on their show. I'll be more than happy to. And if this would be a way into Wrestle Island, if there were anyone on their roster who would step up and actually put out a challenge for me, you can find me anywhere on Twitter. Because after I was on your first show, I actually created a Nitro Green Twitter.
I
and
know.
and I have tried myself like to challenge bigger names in the UK scene as well. I know I talked to you about it as well. It's not always like sometimes it's okay to go after one of the bigger dog in different promotions. So I would hope, and once again, like the worst that can happen is they say no, and it's the
Yeah.
same here with Wrestle Island. The worst they can say is no. So I would hope that there will be a wrestler who sits there on like as a full-time part of their roster, seeing this and being like, maybe they don't give me the chances that I personally feel that I deserve. So I'm gonna create those chances for myself. That's how I became champ. No one gave me those chances, but I had to make them for myself. So if you're sitting as a part of the Wrestle Island, I'll be more than happy to come and prove why I can leave as champ as well.
Big words. And you mentioned Twitter, and I believe that's been like a running joke with quite a lot of, I think, like the ScandiGraps wrestling fans, where I'm like, I will get Scandinavian wrestling on Twitter. And
It took a while, but we're getting there.
Yeah, I'm getting more and more people I'm interviewing. I'm like, right, have you got Twitter? Nope, right, you need to get Twitter. And
Yeah.
with that being said, like I always said to you, with Facebook and Instagram, 9 times out of 10, the people that are liking and interacting with your content are people that are already following you and people that are already aware of you. Whereas I think Twitter is a better platform for networking, especially within the wrestling community. What's your thoughts on, I'd like to say, the growth of Scandinavian wrestling? I've had various people thank myself for it. Personally, I've just give you guys a voice for it. The reason for the growth and the reason for the success is all down to you guys, your hard work and stuff like that. But what's your thoughts on the growth of Scandinavian wrestling whilst the wrestling couldn't happen during the pandemic?
Obviously, not you're saying that you just help us out with it. Obviously, like I think I've had this conversation with multiple guys from the UK as well. Like we don't like the Scandinavian guys never really concerned about the politics and actually how to promote ourselves onto social media, which is now just the most important platform to promote yourself on.
Yeah.
So the growth that has been just this past year has been tremendous. We just haven't seen it yet. Like it's all from within.
Yeah.
The motivation in the locker room is sky high. You can see all the guys are super hungry to get out and get more. And also just like I was blown away of the power of Twitter. I'm not gonna get much into it because from it was it was shared from the Nitro Green page, but it was with a different context because I didn't had the right account on it at the time. But just how much from mouth to mouth a word can spread on Twitter, it just goes to show what a powerful tool it is to get your word like across.
100%. And like seeing you guys go on more podcasts or different companies from outside the Scandinavian like a Nordic region.
Well, you mentioned podcasts. Like not too long ago, I saw Pete Feeney was on a podcast with a guy from Chicago.
Yeah.
And like, I doubt that they knew each other from the past, but like, I'm sure that they have seen maybe your podcast or something where Pete just struck their interest, and good for Pete.
Yeah, it's one thing that I've tried doing is, again, the networking, and at the end of the day, not precious about guests. If I can get somebody a wrestling booking, or if I can get somebody even a different podcast gig, that's the important thing, because it's just trying to work together. And I think the more people work together, whether it's companies or different wrestlers or even different podcasts, to try and spread that more mainstream. You see it with AEW. With AEW working with all these different companies, it's building to some very exciting scenarios. And I think there's no reason why we can't do that within the UK, within Scandinavia. And I'd like to think, although there's been all the politics within the Scandinavian wrestling scene, I'd like to think that's slowly removing itself. You're seeing more people working the trifecta, whether it's Dansk Pro Wrestling, Copenhagen Championship Wrestling, or Body Slam, and that's great to see. And I think the more when Sweden opens up and Norway opens back up and Finland open back up, within that Nordic scene, there's so much talent there to be working together. And I think I said it on every single Scandinavian interview I did, I want that big ScandiGraps show where it can be a massive showcase of everybody just proving how good Scandinavian wrestling is, and hopefully with yourself and more people will start filtering in different European scenes and here in the UK.
I can tell you just from right before the lockdown happened, I was supposed to go to Norway, and there's so many great guys in Norway, and there's so many great guys from Norway that I would love to wrestle.
Who would you like to wrestle?
Espen Olsen is one of them. Like I have wrestled him multiple times, and I've always had good matches with him, but I would love to wrestle him again. Adrian Storm, a great guy as well. I wrestled him once, actually in a tag match with Espen Olsen as his partner. And then the big one that I really want to get in Norway, and I was supposed to have it for the title, because Erik Isaksson, the founder, and like I would say probably one of the best wrestlers in Scandinavia, and definitely the best wrestler in Norway. He dropped such a big amount of weight that he was under the requirements of how he could challenge for the European Cruiserweight title. I would love to get that match with him, both from a personal perspective, because that would be a great learning experience for me.
Yeah.
But also from a professional perspective, saying this is like, because I've had those matches with Chaos in Denmark, who was like the old big bull of Denmark. If I could get that one, like that feather in my cap from Norway, that would be amazing for me.
100%. And Eric is somebody I had on the show to speak about the Norwegian wrestling scene and for what he's done in the UK and in Japan. And
he's been around.
Yeah, such a fascinating person as well, where I'd ask certain things or I'd have some of my research down there and he'd be able to tell me the day, the year, the venue. And no, it's like an elephant brain. He just remembered everything to the very small detail. And when I'm like, and I'd be there and I'd be searching whilst he's saying it. And I was like, you're actually right. And he's like, oh yeah, I don't know why. I just remember all this stuff. And he is an encyclopedia of professional wrestling. And that would be a fantastic match to see for the Cruiserweight title.
If you want to see something now, when you mention like his knowledge from it, take a photo of him 20 years back and then just go like 5 years, 5 years, 5 years, and 5 years and put them next to each other. You see a man who hasn't changed.
No.
He just stayed constantly in shape, and now he's even in better shape now.
Yeah.
And like that's also like he went, I believe he was close to 110 when he was at his heaviest, when he was solid built.
Yeah.
To be able to challenge the European Cruiserweight title, you have to be under 90. So he has dropped a tremendous amount of weight. So how would that affect a guy like him?
100%. And it'd be interesting to see him with that style, and it's exciting to see that despite everything he's done, he was willing to drop all that weight to try and get under the 90. Is there anybody in Sweden or in Finland that you're wanting to maybe defend your championship against?
There in Sweden, I would love to wrestle. What's his name? Thunder. Oh, I'm forgetting his name, but he's super good. It'll get back to me. I'll get it to you. And then in Finland, there's a guy, I can't pronounce his name. He's very short, cut hair, and then a ponytail. He face paint down one of his eyes, and then a big beard. I don't know if you know his name. The name is it's very typical Finnish.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who that might be. You're not on about Shoemaker, are you?
Sorry?
Shoemaker.
No, it's not him.
I'm not too sure.
But there's multiple, like, and in Sweden there is Timmy Force.
Yeah.
I never really wrestled him. I don't know if he still wrestles. I'm sure, like, because he was big in Gothenburg, and I Nitro Green never really made it in Gothenburg.
Yeah.
And I still missing Finland in my list of countries of where I want, like that's still on the list of where I haven't been. So I'll say for right now, I'll go against anyone in Finland.
It's crazy to think you've not been in Finland. And in Sweden, is it Thunderbolt you was on about?
Is he called Thunderbird? He also wrestled as the guy named Strangler.
Yeah.
Yeah, then that's the guy.
Yeah.
Super solid, strong, has a very scary moveset. Like his power is just unbelievable. But that just goes very hand in hand with the different style that I bring.
Yeah. Now, I think that'd be a great matchup. And again, he's somebody that's been on the show, super nice guy. And for what he's been doing, especially with like Freedom Pro as well, they've been doing some great stuff there. And potentially that could be somewhere that you would end up. So for somebody that may have just been jumping in, this is their first interview for Scandinavian Wrestling. What should they expect if they have a look at whether it's Dance Pro Wrestling or Copenhagen Championship Wrestling or just Danish wrestling in general?
Well, it's kind of, since there's 3 companies now in Denmark, I find it very interesting that all 3 companies kind of brings their very different solid product.
Yeah.
We have CCW, who's very raw and gritty, kind of like old school ICW. Like it's hardcore, it's in a warehouse. Like it can be, and like it's just violent.
Yeah.
Body Slam is an amazing production value that they bring in. It's extremely professional and well thought through from start to finish. Great shows, and amazingly run by the promoters.
Yeah.
And then Dance Pro Wrestling is kind of like what brings a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So whatever promotion you choose to watch, you will find solid and good entertainment. And you'll find very young and hungry guys all over the 3 different rosters. and some have just started, and you can still see that they need to polish their craft, and that takes years. And then you'll find others who just are getting ready to travel.
100%. So going off again, we've got Friday the 5th of November, Start the Fire, yourself defending the Cruiserweight Championship against Lou King Sharp. Have you got a message for, first off, the Pro 2 fans of what they should expect, but secondly, what's your message to Lou going into it?
I kind of thought this was going to happen eventually. And this is just bait. And that's the beauty of it. This puts the bullseye on my back, and it put a bullseye on Lou's back. But just keep in mind, it took one shot for me on Lou's back, and then he was done. So this, to me, I use this to lure Lou in. And I can tell you, Pro 2 and the fans, they haven't seen anything from Pro 2 yet. They are in for... I'm not even going to say the word because it's you probably have to beep it out, but it's going to be one heck of a fight, because I am determined that when Pro 2, the main event, is done, if I'm not leaving with the title, they have to carry me out on a stretcher, because hell or high water, Lou King Sharp and Nitro Green, the saga, I want that to end. And I want it to end at Pro 2. I want it to end in Lou King Sharp's backyard.
So, question, what happens if in the Pro 2 main event, the first ever main event of Pro 2 wrestling, Lou King Sharp takes that title off you once again? What would be next for Nitro Green? Like,
that's a good question. Generally, that mindset can't enter. There is no coming back from Pro 2. If I lose to Lou, as I told you, I'm dying in that ring defending that. And if he miraculously walking away with it, I have to step back and reevaluate if I deserve to be champ, because that will be my second defense.
Yeah.
If like, I don't even know if I can realistically defend it on the next the Dance Pro Wrestling show, because I'm contractually obliged to bring the title to Scotland on November 5th. So I believe, I'm not gonna say that I'm not gonna invoke my rematch if I'm losing, because if I have worked so long and so hard to be European champion that I'm gonna use every card that I have in my deck if something goes wrong. But I can guarantee you, he's in for a fight if he wants it.
If something goes wrong at Pro 2 and it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, and you revoke that rematch clause, like the Cruiserweight Championship, it's kind of like part of your identity now. What happens in the rematch if, because again, you and Lou, I know there's that chant, what people like to say on the internet, fight forever, but eventually there's got to be an end. And if you do your contractually obligation of a rematch clause, and this is only hypothetical, like you could go into Pro 2 and wipe the floor with Lou King Sharp.
And I'm planning on it.
But if Lou, whether it's underhanded tactics again, using the mask as a distraction, if Lou beats you and then you fail with the rematch clause, what's next for Nitro? Because Lou could refuse any more matches. What would be next for yourself?
I would love to say the DPW title, or maybe even the CCW title. But I'm also at a stage where, as much as Danish wrestling as a scene is very important to me. It's more important for me to get my word, my name spread over Europe. So if the European title segment, like chapter of my career, will end, I think as much as I would chase gold in Denmark, I would chase bigger promotions in Germany and in the UK.
Is that not something you could do whilst being Cruiserweight champion?
That is definitely something that could be done with the title, and that would probably bring more value and more volume to me coming to those different promotions. But I also feel, as I told you earlier, Lou came with this piss poor excuse that since he had prior matches, he couldn't come in 100%. And I don't want to be that guy who's not walking in 100% to all my matches. Injuries happen, and you'll be sore and you'll be bruised, and that's a part of it. I've had those title defenses myself, but I'm not going to be that guy.
100%, and I can't wait to see what happens on November the 5th at Start the Fire Pro2 Wrestling, yourself defending the championship against Luke King Sharp. And again, I'm excited to see just Scandinavian wrestling coming back. Shows are happening. You're coming over here to the UK with multiple different promotions in Scotland. Hopefully, we can translate that with England. I know we've just done some bold words towards anybody at Wrestle Ireland, and with Carlos Zamora being there. But Nitro, thank you for coming on. Like it was great that you came on. You was one of my first Scandinavian guests that I had on, so it's great that you are my first one back. And yeah, you finally got the cobwebs off. Like I was like, oh, don't know how we're even going to do this. It's been a while. I'm a bit rusty.
Well,
I think
to be fair, I haven't done. I think you were the last podcast I had as well, and now like the venues are filling up again. The restrictions in Denmark are finally being lifted, so now hopefully we can start to wrestle in front of full houses again. So hopefully that will also give more context to your channel.
Brilliant. So where can people find Nitro Green across all of social media?
Well, I'll save the best for last, but Facebook, Nitro Green. On Instagram, they can find me under my real name. So that's Mikkel TT _ Nitro Green. And then Twitter, the beautiful page that the Kurt Johansson show definitely recommended me to get, is Nitro _ Green on Twitter.
Brilliant. And again, Nitro, thank you for coming on. Good luck on November the 5th and everything else coming up before that with Dansk Pro Wrestling. Everybody, make sure you do follow Nitro. And again, if you're wondering more of the history of Nitro Green and maybe the history of Scandinavian wrestling, have a look through the playlist. There's multiple people, including Nitro himself, where we talk about how he got started and everything else building up to the point we are at now. And again, the Kurt Johansson show's back. Wrestling is back, and I'm excited to see what's next. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.